All right, it's time to take a look at some risk management concepts. And the first one we're going to talk about is an impact assessment. Now, this is basically assessing the impact that a risk would have on our organization. Now, when we're doing the assessment, what we're really generally looking for is a dollar amount. So if something was to happen, if we have a risk and that risk is realized, so it is carried out, if it's a vulnerability that's exploited, whatever it might be, if this risk is realized, then we can assign a dollar amount to it. So then we can kind of get an idea of what type of impact is this risk right here going to have on our organization. And in our risk register, put up here our risk register that we've talked about. Well, if we had a risk here and we went through and did the impact assessment, we could assign a dollar amount to that risk. Or we could come up with some type of scale, 1 to $1,000 is, ranking of 1. And 2 and 3 and 4, and maybe we go up to 10. So it would be anything $1 million or more is a 10. And the idea is we want to rank it. So really what this does is allows us to identify the criticality of a specific risk. So I could say, I know this risk is really high because it's going to cost me $3 million if it was to be realized. And that then allows me to rank my risk based on the impact assessment. So I can be ranking it on the impact it will have to my organization. So that is impact assessment. So the next thing we're going to talk about is threat modeling. Now, this is because if you take a look at all the threats that are out there in the entire world, it's overwhelming, right? Absolutely. And the majority of those risks really aren't going to have an impact on your organization. So this is where we really need to focus on our organization and find out what threats do we really face, okay? So the way we do this is we identify what allows our business to function. And we do this from an IT perspective. What IT systems are involved in all these things? So then we come up with a list, and we have a list of the different systems we use, applications, all these different things. So we'll say System 1, maybe Sys 2, App 1, got to have networking, maybe email, all of these things. So once we identify what allows us to function as a company when it comes to IT, because here we're focusing on threats, what we do is take a look at these here, and we figure out how they're kind of laid out and identify the boundary between these systems and the rest of the world. So really the internet, if you will. And that's generally going to be the edge of your network. And at the edge, we a lot of times will have a firewall to help protect us and an intrusion prevention system to help protect us. So what we want to do is identify the threats that would try to cross this barrier in order to access our internal systems. And that kind of helps us to narrow down the threat. And once we identify those threats that would want to try to cross that boundary, we can identify, well, how could they cross that boundary? What ports are open? What services are running? And that is how we create a threat model that actually gives a much better picture of the realistic threats that we face in an organization. Now, we're going to go through a little exercise here. Now, let's say we have a customer service portal at our organization, and our customers use it to log in, access their account, go ahead and place orders, those kinds of things. Now, we as a company, we are the Nugget Lab Corporation, and we have a network over here. Here's our internal network, and over here we have a DMZ that we've talked about in the past, and in the DMZ we have a couple of servers, and they run our customer service portal. And then our customers, well, they're all over the world. They could be anywhere on any continent, any time zone. But the idea is they're all trying to access our customer service portal. So we see here that the boundary is at the network edge. That's where our connection is to the internet. So now we need to figure out what kind of threats do we face? And we're focusing on our customer service portal. What kind of threats are out there that may cause us harm? Well, we could have a denial of service attack or a distributed denial of service attack, and that's, if you're not familiar with it, that's where we have attackers come and try to use up resources on our servers by initiating connections to them, but not like one or two connections. We're talking millions and millions of connections so that we run out of resources on our servers, CPU, memory, and those things, so that they can no longer respond. So that is definitely a type of attack. We might have a brute force attack where an attacker is trying to figure out a username and password combination of one of our customers so they can log in to our system. There could also be vulnerabilities in our web application, because this is running a web application. It's a web app. So there could be vulnerabilities in that web application, and they could be exploited, and maybe an attacker could gain access into a database or into the underlying operating system that the web application is running on. Could be any of those things. So here we're performing a threat modeling exercise. So these are the threats that we are facing that we've come up with. So I'm going to make a little room here now, because we want to talk about the impact that these threats down here could have on our organization. For example, if a vulnerability was exploited and an attacker gained access, they might be able to delete data, and that would cause us some downtime. Of course, we're backing our data up, but still, we'd have to go through a restoration process. We have to go through the security incident process, all those things. So that would cause us downtime. And of course, we're going to be able to associate a dollar amount with that. But if we look at a DDoS or a denial of service attack, that could also cause downtime, which of course we could put a dollar amount to. Another example is that if we did have an attacker that gained access into our application, there's the possibility that they could plant malware within our applications, or they could redirect users from our server to one of their servers that looks the same, so that they could try to collect credential information. So again, we need to go through and assess the impact that these would have on our organizations. So this is the exercise of going through threat modeling. The idea is here we picked a single service that we have, our customer service portal, and we took a look at how our business uses it and what pieces of IT are tied into it. And it's at that point we could identify what kind of threats do we face and what kind of impact do they have on our organization. And that is threat modeling. So these have been some different risk management concepts. Specifically, we talked about performing an impact assessment and then going through the threat modeling exercise, because this is all about reducing risk in our organization. Thanks for watching, and subscribe here to get the latest from CBT Nuggets. And if you're interested in IT career or learning more about IT in general, hey, swing by cbtnuggets.com and sign up for a free trial.